Before we start, I just want to get a little bit of an idea of who's here. So, whether you have multiple kids, one kid, whether you don't have kids at all, and you also are here for your own emotional well being, that's cool too. It looks like a lot of people have multiple kids in different age ranges. And so I'm trying my best to figure out how to present this to a large group of people. And you know, given that you all know this is this very sensitive topic, it's hard to know like how do I talk to people when they're actually feeling some might even say trauma right now. And so I really want to do my best and I welcome all questions on how to get the most out of this and really just help you um build your emotional resiliency through a time that's really unprecedented. So thank you all for being here. And it looks like we have most people have multiple ages, and there's the 6 to 10, 0 to 5, 11 to 14, and the 15 to 18. So I have information for all of those groups. And again, please, I'm going to really spend time at the end for questions because I know it's a very sensitive topic. So a lot of there's been a lot of presentations on this in the past, and I feel like once it first hit, like October 7th happened, everyone was scrambling. It's like, okay, how do I talk to my kids right now for this? What I want to focus on is what do we do now that it's been a few weeks? The initial shock has worn off for some, although not for all of us. um, and also we're still going through it, so what do we say now? Like, is it different? So I kind of broke it up into preschooler, elementary, and middle school, high school, because I didn't want to spend as much time as this, because likely you've already talked about it with your kids. But for preschoolers and elementary school, like again, short to the point, share it's not about them, let them know that they can ask questions. Um, Something like, I know you may have noticed that I'm still feeling sad. There's still a war going on far away. It's been going on for a while. I want you to know that this is me being sad, has nothing to do with you, and we're safe right now. And if you have questions, I'm here to talk. Um, you can also add like a little personal piece to that. So, my son had said to me, like, Mommy, why are you still sad? And I had said, like, I have a lot of family in Israel. And so for me, it feels a little bit closer. So I'm okay and you're okay, but it's still getting to me. And I think that's okay to share a little bit of that and share some vulnerability. For older kids, so be prepared for more questions. I think the biggest piece of the older kids is the social media, and how to kind of keep them safe from it. So one thing I added, and you guys could all read this yourselves, but I wanted to put in here that when you see things online, I want you to tell me. And I ask that I want you to show me the resources that you're looking at. And I want to make sure that they're reputable. As you all know, there's a lot going on out there. There's a lot of information on both sides, being spewed. And I think that it's important to let them know that not everything is truth. I also kind of included in this that I didn't want older kids to watch videos of the violence because, again, we've seen what's out there, and we don't really want our kids to be traumatized by it. But we also want them to know what's going on. We want to be honest with them, and I think it's important. And then I also added, like, here are some things I'm doing to help myself, and I'm wondering if you want to join me. We're going to go into things that you can do for yourself and in turn can help your kids. But I think it's important to say, like, here's what I'm doing for me. um, I wonder what might work for you. So there's an international crisis right now. Why focus on our child and our emotions, right? Like, a lot of people, the saying is almost like, especially I also think about when you're like a very young mom and you just have a baby and everyone's like, it's just survival mode. And while it might feel like just survival mode, at some point we can't just live in survival mode, right? Because we need to make sure that we're helping ourselves and helping our kids. So a child's ability to regulate their emotions, it really has been shown to affect relationships with family, with peers, academic achievement, short and long-term mental health, and also future success. So we really want to help them. We want to help them learn how to regulate. During a time of distress, helping kids regulate their emotions is extremely important. And children who struggle with emotion dysregulation are at increased risk of future mental health problems. Now, I want to be clear, if your child is feeling a heightened sense of emotions right now, that is normal. I don't mean by any means to say, like, if we don't fix this, they're going to have a tough life. That's not what I'm trying to say about this, but I'm trying to talk about how we kind of get out of survival mode while still being very much in the crisis that's going on right now. So, on the airplanes, they always say put your oxygen mask on first. And how do we manage our own emotions first? So, the first thing I want to talk about is take care of basic needs, right? So we want to make sure that we're sleeping, that we're eating appropriately, that we're drinking water, that we're keeping up with our medications, that we're exercising, that we're really taking care of our day-to-day living. I think when something like this happens, it kind of, again, back to survival mode. Um, but it's happening for a long time, and so we need to kind of get out of survival mode and really take care of ourselves. Um, Make a to-do list that you can accomplish. So a big thing during things like this, and we talked about this actually during COVID as well in the beginning, is when we worry about things we can't control, our anxiety goes through the roof. And there's nothing really that we can do to help it because we're constantly worrying about things that we can control. Now, I'm a realist. I know that I can't say like stop worrying about it because that's not true and also not healthy, right? But what can we do? So things that we can accomplish right now. So reaching out to local politicians if you feel strongly about something, signing petitions, donating things, donating your time, volunteering your time, talking to people in in Israel and talking to them, and maybe I saw a lot of people were just having like um someone to talk to that's not about what's going on. Figure out ways that you can do something that you feel like is helpful even in a little way. Like a lot of kids are making bracelets or drawing pictures. Doing something that you can control is a really great way to help your own anxiety because it's something that you can do. It's something that you can physically do. Whereas if we're just worrying about other things, it's much harder to control. Refrain from constantly looking at your news feed. So super hard. All day we want to refresh our feeds. I know that. Schedule times to check. I'm not saying turn off your phones. That's not what I mean. There are some people who might say like don't even go on social media. I'm trying to be realistic in that like we also want to know what's going on. We feel like it's important for us to know, and I also want to say I know that this is very privileged that we have the ability to schedule times to check, right? I think it's important to acknowledge that obviously people in the Middle East cannot do this, but if we're in America, if we're outside of the Middle East, we can. So scheduling times to check. Check only trusted sources. So every time you see something, check it. See if it's something that's reputable. Don't engage with nasty comments, right? So one of the biggest things that we're seeing now is a lot of hatred, and the more that we engage with it, the more that we feel it, the harder it is on us, on our emotional well-being. I like to say like reach out to your friends, reach out to people, your family, and talk to them about it, and look for the positive things as well. Like look for the support that you're getting from other people. I think that's super important because we're always skewed towards the negative. Um, Continue living. It is okay to have happy moments. Again, very privileged to say this. I want to be clear about that, but we can continue living, and it's good to continue living and have happy moments and acknowledge that we're having happy moments. I give you permission to do that. I feel like sometimes when we talk about it, we feel this, there's so many emotions, guilt, anxiety, and I think it's important to be like, okay, I could be happy for some moments despite what's going on over there.
Chelsea, I wanted to interrupt one moment real
Yeah,
quick. We've had a few people mention in the chats that they're here as clinicians. So they also were curious if you had thoughts on how to have this conversation about this subject as a clinician.
I love that question, and I want to share how hard it's been to be a clinician. I don't know if you guys are feeling this because it's really hard when it's something that's personal. How do you bring that to your practice, right? Like we're taught like it's all about them, and it is. So I think what I've been doing is sticking to focusing on the emotions. I've been kind of holding like when some a lot of kids, especially the older ones, have come in with things that I know necessarily might not be true, or I know um it's hard to like hold back and not like jump in. But what I've been doing is also talking to parents a lot, and about the stuff that like you can use this stuff that we're going through, and I would use this to talk to the parents about it and also with the kids, right? Like so acknowledge for the parents, acknowledge, have them acknowledge their own feelings. For the kids, acknowledge what you're feeling, talk out loud about it, right? Like you can, and then, as a therapist, I don't know, it depends on your comfort level, but I've been sharing a little bit about how I'm feeling, right? Like kind of like I would say to my kids, I say it to my patients too. Like, yeah, sometimes I feel really sad about what's going on, even though I'm far away. I wonder how you feel about that, or I wonder how you're coping with that. And maybe, I think it's the next slide or in a few slides, I'm going to go through like what you can control and what you can't control. That's something I've been doing a lot with kids, especially the ones that feel very affected by that. But keep those questions coming because I think as clinicians, it's really good to talk about it together because this is an again unprecedented time. Like we don't go through this, thank God, often. And so we didn't learn this. We didn't learn this part of it. Like, what do you do when you're maybe feeling traumatized? How do you help other people in that way? So please, I welcome all those questions to talk about. And maybe after this, if we still have a lot, we can form like even a group of clinicians that we can talk about it more, because I think it's really important that we work on this together. So um being a coping model. So again, being honest with your kids, right? You don't have to go into all these informations, but this is what I'm doing. Like, it's hard for me to concentrate sometimes. I wonder if you're feeling that way. Normalize having a range of emotions, right? It's okay to feel guilty that we are here and not dealing with sirens. It's okay to feel anger, right? Like, how could this happen in our lifetime? It's okay to feel that anger. It's obviously okay to feel sadness, and it's also normal to feel scared. So something else that we'll talk about is we're talking about having another webinar on something about like how to raise your kids during this time with all the hatred going on, right? Like we are a little bit more scared than we were a month ago on for us, for our kids, for our patients, and that's okay. So this is the activity I was talking about, and this is something that I use a lot, not just in this situation, but in general with kids with anxiety and adults, and also for people who have PTSD. Now, again, I don't know if we can qualify this as PTSD yet, but we're going through it right now. And I think it's super helpful to talk about this. So, hugging your family, daily tasks, volunteering, signing petitions, speaking out, things we can control, specifically how we treat others, right? We can control that. What we can't control is other people's hatred, the politics, the safety of those in Israel and Gaza, the hostage relief, the war release, the war. We cannot control that. And I think sometimes for people with anxiety, and I think it works really well with those kids that we can say, okay, how do we like compartmentalize and like make the best of our efforts? So I actually wanted to open this, and Beth, I want you to read some of the responses we get, but I think it's helpful. So like if everyone could write, what are some other things that we can control? So um I'll just pull up what I had written, but if you can think of anything else, like I think it's helpful to think about like I think a big part about what we're going through is the helplessness, right? Like I want to do everything that I can to help people there. Um, but how can I do it? Short of me just flying there, and I don't even think I'd be that much of help there. So what can I do? And so Beth, if you're seeing anything.
Sure. Um, One person mentioned that we are privileged to check our news feeds. Their understanding is that people in the Middle East don't have that privilege right now.
Yep.
And people in Israel and Gaza do not have access to that.
Yep.
If there's any other responses, you all are welcome to put them in the chat and I can respond to them. We can control our reaction to information and what we do with the information.
Yep. Exactly.
We can write letters to soldiers.
I love that. Just to share a tidbit of that, like in the very beginning, a lot of the kids, the school that my children go to, they were writing letters to soldiers. And look, my cynical response at first was just like, what is that going to do? Like, are they even going to get it? And then we got a video back from soldiers reading them. And did that control the war? Like, did that make everything better? No, not necessarily. But I think, but what we got from that is that the soldiers felt support. And I think that's something that's really important and special that we can control, and that could make you feel like you're doing something, even if it's like a little picture or a little letter. So I love that one.
That's
To
a
me,
great anecdote. I love that story as well.
it made me
Very
so
good.
happy.
Yeah.
It was really sweet. It was really sweet.
We
So
also heard that we can put donations together by selling
love it.
things or a collection. We can
Love
work
it.
within our community and work with clergy. We can help each other by spreading love to strangers, meditation and prayer, and
Love it.
including people of all backgrounds in these conversations.
I love
We
it.
can create a connected community to build support and then and boost each other's morale, control. requires and cooperate with others, control how we treat people in our lives,
Yes,
even if they're different than us, and control the message we send our kids about compassion for people different than us.
beautiful. I love
Um,
all of these. These are
so
great.
yeah.
These are all really good. And going back to the first thing someone said about the privilege, I know I mentioned that a lot already. Um, and I think that's sometimes where the guilt comes in too, is like I remember there was one day I was like, I can't be on social media. I was like really busy with work and it was stressing me out. I was like, I'm gonna take a break. And then at night I was like, how could I do that? How could I not look at the news? What does that make me? And I felt that guilt. Um, it just all day, and I did wind up checking the news here and there just because I do want to be informed, but I think it's important to recognize the emotion of what you're feeling and then like sit with it. And we're going to talk a lot about like meditation and mindfulness more about how we can kind of live in the moment and be present. And I think that's also super important. So how can I help my child build emotional resilience? So we talk a lot about this, not just in the context of the Israel Hamas war, but also in terms of like life, right? Our job as parents, one of our biggest jobs, is to help our children build this emotional resilience so that whatever is thrown at them, we could we can help them and they can learn how to help themselves. So we're very big on attending to the child's positive behavior. So if you notice that your child is having an extra hard time during this time and they're still helping people, like someone said, show compassion. Really, I want you to point that out. Like, I love how you're having a hard time, I love how you're helping others even when you're having a hard time yourself. um, Helping your child manage their big emotions, help yourself manage your own thoughts and feelings. So how do we do that? So first off, model calm. So take a few moments before responding. You know, we're sometimes during these times we're on a little bit more on edge than we usually are. Like take a few moments before you respond to your child. I love this quote was, when little people are overwhelmed by big emotions, it's our job to share our calm, not join their chaos. I actually wish we can say that about all people, right? Like now during this time, like, you know, everyone's inciting other things and others in terms of like chaos, like model calm. Take a few moments before responding. And actually, I give this to you for when you see something on social media. Before you write back, take a moment. Is it going to help me? Is it going to benefit me? Is it going to benefit the world if I respond to this? um, Use mindfulness skills to notice what you're feeling in your body and the thoughts and judgments going through your mind. So I will admit, I think mindfulness is a great skill and I think it's super hard. So in a few slides I talked about some strategies that I use personally for someone who has difficulty with mindfulness. But I think noticing what you're feeling and accept it is much better than saying, oh, I shouldn't feel this way. Or I had one kid, and this resonated with me. He was like, I can't be upset about what's going on in Israel because I don't live there. Like it's rude for me to feel that way. And I was like, actually, right? Like we could reframe that as that's compassion. So right away he was judging himself. It was empathy, right? He was saying, I don't have a right to feel this way. And it got me thinking a lot about adults too. Like, how could we feel this way? I know a lot of people might feel this when they're looking at their children. How could I be angry at my kid when some people don't have their kids anymore because of what's going on? It's okay to feel that way, and it's okay to notice that, and just like watch the judgments go because we're our hardest critics. Try not to get sucked into the chaos, right? Like it's really easy to, again, I'm going back to social media because I think it's a different time now where we are all connected in this, and one comment could lead to another, to lead to another, and then all of a sudden you've been in this for an hour, and your anger level goes up, or your stress level. And again, for your kids, by staying calm, you'll help your child to calm down as well. So I feel like in every webinar I do, I have to make a plug for the pride skills because I think they are so useful. And I think, especially at a time when we're feeling low, it's really helpful. And for the clinicians out there, so the pride skills are for PCIT, which is parent child interaction therapy, which was developed by Sheila Iberg, and it was for kids with oppositional defiant disorder and ADHD. That's the evidence for it. It has been adapted for everything. So we use it for kids with anxiety, for selective mutism, for really everything. And my biggest thing is I think use like every parent should learn this, and teacher. I think it's super helpful. And again, it's not rocket science. It's just putting it all together is really really powerful. So they're called the pride skills. So it starts with specific labeled praise for positive things. So for me, during this time, just to relate it to this, is like, I like how you're staying calm, even though I know it's been a hard day. Or, um, I love how you're like, let's praise them for help. I love how you're writing letters to soldiers, even though you don't live there, right? That shows empathy. So anything that you can praise them for, I think is really beneficial. I love how you're sharing so nicely with your sister. Reflecting, so repeating back what they say, it increases the quality and frequency of your child's speech. And for now, for me specifically, I think in this moment, it keeps me present in the moments with my children. And we'll talk about that. Same with patience, right? Like, it's hard to, it keeps us in the moment and present in the right now. The eyes imitate just playing with them, like keeping it on a developmental level. It teaches them play skills. It expresses approval of chosen activities. The descriptions are basically like a play by play. It provides attention to appropriate behaviors and indicating approval. It again helps maintain attention, and it helps to describe positive things that your child does. So, again, this isn't totally related to what's going on in Israel right now. It's about how to keep ourselves present and to help our children with emotional regulation. Again, this is not for this, it's for everything. I think it's just really helpful in general. And the E is enjoy. Spend time with your child, show them that you enjoy spending time with them. I think one of the biggest things that happens when we're parents and clinicians, but when we're going through something, right? It's super hard to be present with our children and with ourselves. And for me, using these skills and just setting aside, so the next slide is, when should I use this? So use it with high frequency during one-on-one time. So honestly, setting aside 5 to 10 minutes with your kids alone, just 5 to 10 minutes. The people I work with are like, you always say it's only 5 minutes and you stress it a lot. And the reason why I'm saying only 5 to 10 minutes is because a lot of people leave these things and are like, okay, I'm gonna do it for a half hour today. And then you wind up not doing it because it's too much time. There's so much you have to do. But research shows 5 to 10 minutes is enough. Just 2 to 3 toys away from distractions. And it's a time where you really can connect with your kid. It's child led. You play with what they want. You might set it up so that they don't have to make so many decisions. But it helps you be present. It helps them. I describe it as almost like filling their cup, right? Filling your cup and filling their cup. If they get this uninterrupted 5 to 10 minutes, they're more likely to listen. It helps them regulate. It teaches them play skills. It's so beneficial, especially during a time when, as parents, it's much harder for us to be with them, and even clinicians, it's much harder for us to be present and to almost like show our best self. Like, there are times we want to be honest, we want to be real with kids, and there's also times when we want to also show them that we still have time for them, we still want to be alone with them. And the goal for these skills is to generalize being used throughout the day. So again, especially those, labeled praises and the reflections when they're telling you a story, like, repeat it back to them. I think it's again keeps you present and helpful. And it builds a strong, warm connection, which is a protective factor for kids. um, we know that paying attention to the positive can be extremely powerful in improving their emotional and behavioral regulation. So, talking about emotional regulation a little bit, whether it's related to this or not, is a lot of times when we're with kids, when we're working with kids, and when we're parenting kids, we're constantly telling them what not to do. We're constantly commenting on the negative, not because we're bad people, but because we don't think to comment on the little positive things that they do. So, thank you for sharing. Or, I love how, you stayed calm even when your little sister knocked your tower down. This is showing them that we're noticing the positive things. We're not just noticing, like, stop running, or why do you always do that, or how come you're not listening. We're really paying attention to the positive things, and the things we want to see more of. um, Validation, so help your child manage big emotions. So validation communicates to your child that his or her feelings make sense and are understandable given the situation. So it doesn't mean that we like or agree with what the other person is doing, saying, or feeling, just that, like, we know where they're coming from. So I know what you may have heard seems really scary right now. So we're validating, we're safe here, and we're doing everything we can to keep it that way. Just going off a little bit, I get the same kind of things come up when we see school shootings or something else that might happen in our proximity or on the news. And parents always say to me, like, okay, but how do we know that we're safe here? Like, how do we know that someone's not going to come into our school and shoot people? How do we know that someone's not going to target our house because of our race or our religion? And my answer to you, unfortunately, is we don't know. But what we do know is that we're doing everything we can to keep our kids safe, right? So for the school shooting example, like, I get that a lot. And we chose a school that we believe is safe, right? So I know what you may have heard sounds really, really scary. Um, we are doing everything we can to keep you safe. We really trust the school that we send you to, and we know they're doing their best to keep you safe as well. And we can use that in the time now, right? So the argument again is, how do we know they're not going to target our kids? We don't. But what we do know is that we're taking extra precautions to keep them safe. And I think we can say that with confidence because back to what we can control, what we can't control, we can't control other people, but we can control us. Again, even with that control, we don't know what will happen and things do happen. But here's what we're doing to keep you safe. So, mommy and daddy are doing all that we can to keep you safe. The school is doing all that they can to keep you safe. So, why do we validate? Well, one, it helps children identify their own emotions. It helps us too. Like, I like this whenever we talk about kids. Um, and sorry, I'm going a little off tangent, but I want to also talk about us as adults. But whenever I talk about like what we can do for kids, we can do that for ourselves and our partners, our significant others, our family members. So I was coaching a dad in PCIT once, and he came in and he was sort of like, I didn't like, he was a tough dad. Like, I didn't need to get praised all the time. We don't want to praise our kids. Like, we want them to be tough. And I said, like, let's just try it. It's good to feel that way. Anyway, I was coaching him, and some of the coaching was like, that was a great label praise. And I pointed out, I was like, do you see how your child is so happy playing with you? And afterwards, this big tough dad said to me, he's like, no one's ever like told me I was a good dad before. No one's ever told me I was so good at doing something. And it was just like all these label praises for him really built up his self-esteem, and that relationship with their kid um really blossomed. And for me, I tell that story a lot just because it like resonated with me, that sometimes it's also good to validate not just our children's emotions but our partner's emotions, right? Like, I hear that you're really angry about what's going on right now, and I'm here with you. um it also helps decrease the intensity of the emotion, right? Just to hear someone validate is like, okay, I don't have to be this angry, or like, they get me, they understand what's going on. And it helps your child or significant other or your family member feel heard and understood. So what you're not saying like you're right to act this way, which in this case, like, obviously there's a lot of big emotions, but I'm even talking about when a child has a tantrum or a partner has a tantrum, right? We're helping them feel heard and understood, while not necessarily saying, but you're allowed to do that or it's okay to act that way. So, how do we validate? So, we active listening and noticing. So, it seems like you're extra worried about mommy leaving tonight. Mommy is making sure to be as safe as possible. I'll see you when I get home. So, you're validating. You're not saying to them, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal, because that's invalidating. And that makes people look, the more that we tell someone not to worry, the more they worry more, right? So if like you have a child who is is afraid to separate from you, and you say like, it's don't worry about it, it's just school. Like, they are worried about it, right? So by saying that, then they start to think about it a little bit more. So a validation for that would be like, I know it's really hard to go to school and leave mommy, and I know that you can handle it. I can't wait to see you when you get home. Separate. Describe the emotion your child is expressing. Respond in a way that shows you're taking their emotions seriously. And again, these are things we can do with our family members, our adults, our patients, anything. Um, I hear you saying that you feel helpless. I feel that way also. I wonder if we can figure out some things that we can control. Or I hear you saying that you feel really scared that we're in danger too. Here's what we're doing to keep us safe. Or you don't even have to come up with a solution. It could just be, I hear you're saying that you feel scared that something might happen to us. We're doing our best to keep safe, and I know that we'll get through this together. Short, sweet, validating. Use and instead of but. So this is a big thing. It's semantics, but like when we say like, I know you're feeling scared, but it's going to be fine, we're negating what we just said. Instead, I know you're feeling scared, and I know we can get through this together. I added this at the end, validate your own emotions, because again, I know I keep saying this, but we're allowed to feel this way too, right? Like just because we become a parent or a clinician or something doesn't mean that we can never have a bad day or never let our emotions show. So validate it. I will say that as a parent, obviously, we back to maintaining our calm, we have this pressure that when we're around our kids, because we know that the more anxious we are, the more anxious our kids become. So validate our emotions. So I know that I'm feeling really anxious right now. And right now I'm going to focus on my child, and I can talk about it with my husband later, or XYZ. Like coming up with a plan for yourself, I think is really important. So here are some mindfulness activities. I actually wanted to do this first one with everyone right now. So it's pretty quick. I know before I shared that mindfulness is very hard for me. It is extremely hard for me to do that typical mindfulness of just sitting in a room and like listening. It's very hard. So the five senses one for me is really easy because I can do it in the moment and it's giving me something to do. So right now I want everyone to name five things that they can see. And now name four things that you can touch, three things that you can hear, two things that you can smell, and one thing that you can taste. So for me, this was the easiest one for me to do because it gives me something to do to focus on. And while I'm doing these things, I can't be focusing on other things. So when I'm saying five things that I see, I'm really, really focusing on five things that I can see in the room. I'm not focusing on what's going on in the news. When you're going through each of this, it just helps you be present in where you are. So when is a good time to do this? So one of the guilts, that I was feeling, um, going through all of this is I have two kids. One is four, almost four, and one is 9 months. And specifically, when I was holding my 9 month old, I felt extreme guilt of that. I have this beautiful baby that is safe and in a warm house and is with me. And it was really hard for me to be with him because I felt just guilt. So I use this exercise a lot with him specifically. So I would do five things about him that I can see, four things that I can touch, three things that I can hear, two things I can smell, one thing that I can taste, which can't really taste him, although give those kisses. And for me, it helped me be present in that moment right now, and also acknowledge that I am lucky, and I can validate that. Like I'm allowed to be lucky, and it's good to be lucky. And then the other thing, going back to the pride skills. So what do you do with your older kids or your patients or anything? Is the special time is 5 minutes special time, just me and him, that I could be present and not on my phone checking what's going on, not working, not thinking about dinner, not thinking about school. Like it's just 5 minutes that it's just me and him. A mindfulness jar, and these are all things that you can Google too, but it's basically like, and I'm gonna rush through this because I want time for questions. But a mindfulness jar is basically you fill it with some glitter, you shake it up, and it's really helpful for kids because when you shake it up, it shows your brain with all of your emotions and how you can't think clearly with it, and then you put it down. And the goal is that they watch the glitter fall until it becomes clear, and that's what you show the brain, right? Like so when you have all these bottled up emotions, it's like it's shaking and you can't think clearly. But when you let it sit and give yourself a second, it's clearer and you can think and make better decisions. Grounding with colors, finger breathing exercise, and then there's a plug for Cosmic Kids Yoga because I think they have really good videos that I use a lot in sessions actually, and also at home. But I think in sessions I've used this a lot with kids who are really anxious that need to like rest their brains, and they have a lot of things on that website. So I have two challenges for everyone before I get to questions. So tonight I want everyone to, for at least 5 minutes. This is for, I was doing this for kids, for parents with children. But if you don't have children and you happen to be here, I want you still to do this. Put your phone on the other side of the room for at least 5 minutes while you're present with someone else or yourself. If you're with your kids, try to use the pride skills as best as possible. If you're not, just a 5 minute break, just across the room. What I was finding that like I would be with my son and then I would like refresh, um, and that wasn't helpful. And so I'm working on this too, but putting it aside, be present with your kids, with your partner, with your family members, with yourself. And if you're with your kids, try to use those pride skills as best as possible to connect with them and give that attention. And then the other challenge is next time you're feeling anxious, you can do any mindfulness activity, but I wanted to make it very specific so it's more likely for people to follow. But do that five senses mindfulness activity, and it could be anywhere, on the subway, on the at work, at home, in the shower. Like just do the five senses or any mindfulness activity for it. It only takes 1 minute, just to kind of escape from what you're feeling, for the moment, and I think it could be really, really helpful. So here are some resources that we have. Um, we're going to now open up to questions. And Beth, I think you have to read the questions to me, which is great. But I know Beth had said we're doing free 20-minute phone consultations. We are also offering reduced fee for families that are really struggling with this. I think that's one of the ways on my what you can do and what you can't control, right? I can control, um, working, and I can control helping people with this. So please reach out if you're struggling or need any support. And then there's a slideshow and also the JCC that I know has been offering great resources. And I'm sure there's many more that we haven't included on here. Um, but if anyone wants to reach out to, you can send us some and we can offer it to our patients as well.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rosen. I am going to start with the questions in our Q&A, and then I will try to scroll up. We've had a pretty active chat, so I will try to answer questions in the chat after our Q&A. But if you have not asked a question yet, please drop it in the Q&A because we're going to start there and then try to get to the questions in our chat. We also, if we cannot get to all of our questions in the Q&A today, we will try to post some responses in social media. And I am going to be sending an email to the attendees today. So I know, again, we've had a fairly active chat. So including that discussion on, support, follow-up support, especially for clinicians. So feel free to respond to that email if you have any follow-up questions or needs. And we can answer them there as well. But I'm going to go ahead and get started. Our first question is, how do we do the validation? This question, I think, came when you were describing the validation slide. How do we do this validation when we don't get any emotional expression about the situation, but instead feelings about conflicts with siblings, etc.? So it may not be like a direct link, but they can sense that's why.
Can you repeat that?
Sure. So how do we do this validation when we don't get the emotional expression about the situation that the parent thinks is creating that conflict, but instead comes out as, for example, a conflict with a sibling?
So I think like validating, so they might not be able to express their emotions, you might not know. You can guess and they can correct you. So let's say they're really frustrated with their sibling because they keep knocking it down. Like, I know you may be frustrated because your sister keeps taking apart your Legos. That's it, right? Like, and if you're wrong, they might say to you, "I'm not frustrated." Okay. Only you can know how you're feeling. I was just trying to take a guess, and then that's it. I think it's really okay. I think sometimes, with these types of things, it's okay to take guesses, and I actually prefer that. Um, in the moment, if you're having a kid that's having a huge reaction, I really advise against saying, I want, like, what's going on right now? How are you feeling? Because they're not able to share in that moment when they're so angry or frustrated or dysregulated to say like, I'm feeling angry. Maybe they can, but even if they do say that, they're not typically able to then have an open discussion about it. So in the moment, I would say it looks like you're feeling frustrated. Um, I know it's really hard when your sibling does X.
Great. Thank you. Another question was, how do you navigate conversations with children who feel they have to take a side? That could specifically be Israel versus Palestine or in general sort of conflict that a child may be experiencing where there's two different sides.
I think back to what someone had said before is teaching our kids empathy and teaching them that, like, we to support people of every race and religion. And I think it's saying, right, like, the end, right? It's super scary what's going on right now, and I know it's really hard to feel for both sides and validate that, right? Like, it's really hard to feel for both sides. And what we can do here is help people here of all different races and religions, like bringing it back to what we can control. And I think saying, like, that we don't, like, however you feel about it, you can say, maybe I feel that way too. um, Sometimes things, the world is a scary place, and here's what we can do. I always bring it back to what we can do, only because for me, it gives it, if we worry always, and again, we have to worry about what's going on, and we do, which is why we're here. But I think saying, like, and we support all people, right? Like, let's maybe, like, let's go to our neighbors, let's that we have, that might be of a different religion. We can talk about that too and help them be empathetic.
Thank you. We have a question. How do you determine what is valid information and then your clients? So we may need a little more information on that question. If you feel like you could expand in the chat, feel free to, I mean, in the Q&A, feel free to send a follow-up. But perhaps if you can address the first part, Dr. Rosen, on how can you determine what is valid information?
On You mean on social media and everything?
Um, That is, let's start with that. And then, Laurie, if you can hear me, if you want to add more, please feel free to. Apologies. I just want to make sure we do answer your question.
Can you repeat it, Beth? Sorry.
Sure. It was, how do you determine what is valid information and then your clients? So I don't know if they meant perhaps like if as a clinician you're meeting with a client and you're not certain what they're saying is valid.
So that's hard. So I think if you're meaning, like, if someone's saying something that you think is not true, how do you handle it? So I think a big piece of it is, and there was one patient that I just, you don't want to talk about your thoughts all the time. So there was one patient that I was looking at news sources that I knew weren't valid. And so instead of saying that's invalid, what I did was I actually brought it to a post of, like, here are things that we should look for. It was almost like an educational session, actually. A social media danger. We do this all the time, even before this, with teenagers, right? What not to post, what to post. And then I had them, I said, Here are some resources. And when you find something like this," back to my slide about how to talk to their parents about it, like, bring it to your parents and talk to them about it. And in a lot of these cases, that's something that's important, is to bring it to their parents and talk to them about, like, how do we know if it's valid or not, and like, kind of give it to the parents to do that. If you are a parent, how do you do it? I think the way we do anything, right? Fact check, look at different resources, see what you believe. But I think it's really important for us as human beings to fact check a lot of things, and also teach our kids to do the same thing. Any other questions?
Are there any other questions? Um, let's see, we have another question. Thoughts on the likelihood that whatever was going on with the child, parent, or clinician before this event influences our reaction as the event ensues and evolves? Ways to stop and self-inventory these parallel tracks.
Meaning, like, if you were going through anxiety before, this might have exacerbated it.
Exactly. I'm thinking exactly that. Or perhaps even sort of personal or historical family experiences that may come up. I know in the chat that came up, for example, like if you have family that live or did live in Israel or Palestine, it may impact sort of the way you're feeling about all this. So how does that reaction come into play?
So I think that makes us who we are, right? So and back to validation, like there's a reason why I might be more sensitive to this, or you might be more sensitive to this and more aware of it. Um, there's a reason why you're feeling extra strong about it, emotional, and I think that's okay to share with our children and with our partners and with ourselves, right? Like, I'm feeling extra scared now because of what's going on, and here's what I could do to help myself. And I think inviting it in, um a lot of people had said to me, like how do I feel scared walking through the streets now, whereas I always did, but now um I'm much more aware of what's going on. And I think it's like I said, bring it to attention. There's a reason why I'm more aware of of what's going on, and here's what I'm going to do to protect myself, right? So we wouldn't tell someone with PTSD, like, don't worry about it, that only happened once, right? There's a reason why they might be holding their bag a little bit tighter. And so again, accepting that, acknowledging it, I'm feeling extra sensitive today because of X, what's going on, and I'm going to just be more aware. I'm going to still live my life. I'm going to still go to work. I'm going to still, take care of my kids. I'm just going to be a little bit more aware, and that's okay. Any other questions?
All right. We let me one person put a question back in from earlier. Let me see if I can find it. Um, let's see. Oh, here we go. Any tips for what to say to a kiddo 5 who hears details from older siblings and is sharing details to classmates? So perhaps just not age appropriate levels of um
That's a
yeah.
that's a very, very good question. Um, and this reminds me of like when it happens with like curse words and stuff like that with older siblings. But I think I would actually, if it's getting back to you from the teacher, I would actually talk to the teacher about how they can help too, because it's not just on you. I mean, we have to talk about it with our kids at home, and I think that's the part where you can say, like, I know you're hearing things from your older siblings. A lot of people talk about it in different ways. Here's how we talk about it at home. Here are some things you can say at school. So kind of give them, instead of saying don't talk about it, you can give them appropriate language. And then I would talk to the teacher about like what they're talking about in school, right? Like, what are they sharing and what do they feel comfortable sharing in school? And then just be on the same team that way, because you can set, and I feel this way all the time with everything, right? You send your kids off, you can teach them things, but it has to be validated and encouraged at school too. So come up with if you're getting feedback from the teacher that this keeps coming up, I would talk to the the teacher about it and say, okay, like, what are you sharing with the class, and how can I help? And then talk to your younger kid about it and say, like, listen, I get, like I said before, here's what we talk about, here are some things that you can say at school, but not everyone um, wants to hear about it, or not everyone is learning about it because it's a very sensitive topic.
And then, okay, we probably have time for one more question. It's okay. I think maybe we are good then. Dr. Rosen, thank you so much for your time and for providing kind of valuable information, responses to questions. To all of you who attended, thank you so much for joining us. We will be sending an email as follow-up. So if you have anything else, please feel free to respond to my email. We greatly appreciate all of you for joining us. And info@manhattanpsychologygroup.com is a really quick contact us if you need to contact us. But again, the email to you all will also come from me if you want. So thank you guys again so much for joining us. And we hope, yes, that you found it valuable as well. We'll be following up and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Risson.
Thank you all for coming, and feel free to reach out if you have any other questions.
Absolutely. Thank you.